Anyway, I'm very happy to be here among you. I'm very honored, very flattered. And yesterday, in the dinner, Tsiki asked me to say a few words. I didn't have time. And before I'll give my lecture concerning Israel's foreign policy in a changing world, I'd like to say a few words concerning your organization and to say what I think, because I'll be honest with you, it's not because you're an editor-in-chief that you know everything. And I wasn't aware. I mean, I knew, of course, what is over the rainbow, but not in details. And when Tsiki arrived with his beautiful family to the hotel, I was outside, waiting, expecting. And we had a talk. We had a very interesting talk. We had a talk about the organization, about Israel, about Judaism, about Zionism, about his wife, about my wife, about you, about everything. In a few minutes, but it was very interesting and very deep. And I was very happy to have this conversation, and I'll tell you why. Because I came back now from the States, from DC. I was supposed to go home because I haven't been home for almost 10 days, which is a lot of time. But I'm happy to stop in Berlin before going back home because IAC was huge, was tremendous. It's always good to be in Washington and to be among friends and among the big Israeli community that wants to be united with Israel. A lot of resemblance with you, of course. But at the same time, I saw something happening that worried me a lot. And when I spoke with Tsiki, and he remembers that well, I was very much reconforted. He reconforted me before going back home, and maybe all of you, including yesterday's talk, and I hope also during this weekend, and of course when I see my not my amazing rabbi, but my rabbi, who sits among you, and I hope never to disappoint him, I'm happy because I see here an organization that understood that we have to do it together. We have to be united. That the best ally of Zionism will always be Judaism, always. You can't find another option, you will not find a better option, let me tell you. And vice versa. Judaism was for 1,300 years, Orthodox Jews, kept this important value, the most important value, in order to make Herzl being able to do what he did. And why do I say all this? Because in IAC during last weekend, I saw amazing people, amazing Jews, amazing Zionists, yet at the same time, I saw debates that put me in a very uncomfortable situation concerning the place of religion, and as if religious people, how would I say, have become in a way our rivals. It shouldn't be like that. We should continue and live together. And when people today tell me, look at what's happening in the world, we should worry. Look, Europe is now against us. Look in America, those currents in colleges. Look at the new Democrats. Look and look and look. No. I think that the most important thing, the most important target of us, the most important challenge we have is, of course, among us. And when I see the way you're building your organization, the way you see you're united, not only among people, but among in your minds, in the values, I can tell you that I'm going back home very glad and very reconforted. And thank you very much, Tsiki, for what you do, and thank you very much to all of you. Now I'm going to make the little lecture I prepared. I'll tell you a little hint. When I was a correspondent, I could speak, not instead freely, but I could say anything I want. When you're editor-in-chief, you have to be serious, zero mistakes. Otherwise, this is not very nice. So I prepared, I never prepare. And afterwards, of course, I'll give you some personal insights, and we have time, if we have time, for some questions and answers, I'll be glad to answer. So we shall speak about, of course, Israel's foreign policy in a changing world, separating facts from fiction. Now, before I start, I am now in Germany, and there is a book written, of course, in German, Austria. It's Stefan Zweig, that you all probably know. It's The World of Yesterday, I think you say in English. The Olam Shel Etmol, Eldad, The World of Yesterday. And when you read this book, you see a man who lives in Vienna, amazing Vienna, plays, theater, books, amazing world. No man, he couldn't imagine to live what he lived. And I think today, God forbid, I don't wish, I don't expect, I do not want a war, none of us, want war, not for us and not for anybody else. Yet at the same time, I do believe that we live right now at the end of a cycle. This is a really changing world. This is maybe even a turning point for many of us. Maybe also technology is contributing to that. But at the same time, the last thing I would like today in front of you is to predict, because I think that nowadays, you can't really predict anything. Things are changing and things are taking a course that no one could expect. And I can give you also examples. If, for example, 20, 30 years ago, someone will tell me, for example, about the Twin Towers. Someone will tell me that Berlin Wall. Someone will tell me about the USSR collapsing. Someone will tell me that an Israeli prime minister will be killed by an Israeli. Someone will tell me so many things. I would say, you're insane, go and see a shrink. And those things happen. So I can't say what will happen also in 20 years. Anyway, concerning our issue, I think that there is the mistaken belief that Israel is isolated on the world stage. We like to say that, you know, we like to grieve all the time, and in 2010 or 11 we even had an ex-prime minister who was talking about this coming tsunami and we're going to be isolated, everybody detests us. We sometimes like this. People have been told that it is a pariah because of its foreign policy. Foreign policy, Israel's foreign policy, as you know, Palestinians don't have a state yet. We still have wars. I mean, we don't have our borderlines. We have settlements, and that is why we're isolated. I mean, this is a fact. And this false premise, I think, is based on the international forums that constantly vote against it. The UN, UNESCO, and so forth. I mean, as they vote for us, we believe, I mean, we're isolated, all the world's detest us. But Israel's foreign standing compromises two dimensions. You have to understand that. We have the multilateral and the bilateral. So the multilateral, as I said before, it's obvious. You go to Geneva, you go to the UN, and you do say to yourself, my God, I mean, that's it. I mean, we're doomed. And then comes the multilateral, which is controlled by the old anti-Israel agenda that cannot be changed because of vested political interest. But the bilateral can and is being changed for the better by Israel's strong presence in the region, its efforts to de-escalate tensions, and its thriving economy that lures investors and trade, and its economy has outperformed virtually every country in the West. You can't, I mean, these are figures, I mean, you can discuss everything you want, but these are figures that you can't discuss. Now we have to see that lately, I mean, in those coming years, although you can read the paper and again think that we're doomed, you see a boom in bilateral relations of Israel. Over the past year, Israel has made several foreign policy breakthroughs. Yes, I mean, it surprises you, but that's a fact also. I mean, I'm sorry to come here with also some good news, because there are also some good news. I know that we always like to come and grieve and mourn and say that that's it, I mean, it's the beginning of the end, but no, it's not. It's not. This is what maybe the best period of our life. And I don't exaggerate. And let me tell you a little comment. I mean, thank you very much, Tsiki, for inviting me. I've been in more than 94 countries to be precise. I'm a collector. I collect everything I do. And this is the first time ever in Berlin. And I come in Berlin, and what a special date. What a significant date. Unfortunately, what a significant date. Thank you, Tsiki, for inviting me. And at the same time, I come and speak to you about my country, about your country, about Israel, about us, about religion. Look how strong we are in comparison even to certain European countries. How many was that significant date? 79 years ago? Can't we? I mean, we lost our patience. Look at this. I mean, this is amazing numbers I'm giving you. This is a tremendous, tremendous miracle, even in a way. A miracle that man made with the contribution of God, Baruch Hashem. Anyway, over the past year, Israel has made several foreign policy breakthroughs, as I said. The first ever visit by an Indian prime minister. And of course, an expected reciprocal visit by PM Netanyahu. Now, I can tell you also concerning that visit, when Prime Minister Modi came to visit us a few months ago, when was that? I think it was in June. I had the privilege of interviewing Prime Minister Modi in Delhi. So I had a trip to Delhi, and I was amazed. You know, India, very small country, 2 citizens only. No, nothing, it's small. It's like Cyprus, half of Cyprus. India, you land in India, and you give your passport at the passport control, and you say you come from Israel, and you see, I mean, amazement in people. I mean, this is, wow, you come from Wonderland. And we talk about India, over 1 billion population. This is huge. This is great. So when you say all the world hates us, do me a favor. Lufthansa goes to New Delhi every day. Very good flight, by the way. Very good flight. You can take it. And you will be shocked, and you will see how much those people are impressed by our work, by our effort, by our unity, even by our religion. And when I go and see Prime Minister Modi in his office, and I see the way he speaks about my country, about your country, which is Israel, I'm impressed, I'm flattered, I'm honored. And it gives me great energy and great strength to continue. And that is where also we have to change our way of thinking, our way of logic, because people, with all due respect, although what you hear in the news, I'm sorry to say, even BDS, you know why BDS exists? Because we won. Because we won, and we shall proceed. We won. And that's why also you're here, because you don't want to, not to lose, but you want to even make this win even a greater effort, even a greater issue, and that's why Tsiki is working so hard. Anyway, the first visit by an Israeli Prime Minister to Australia also, and Singapore. We had talks with Asian nations to establish a free trade agreement. Asian giants, including India, as I said, Japan and South Korea, are rapidly exploring ways to increase their trade with Israel because they know that China's growth may be limited. And between you and me, we spoke about Lufthansa. Just look at the flights between Tel Aviv and Beijing. I mean, they're packed. Try to find a place in those planes. It's amazing. This is amazing. Another thing, you know, when I went to Paris to study, of course, my father, late father that I loved so much, was clever enough to come to Israel in 1961 and not stop in France, wanted me to go to be a dentist, and my mother wanted me to do business school. I went to do Africa studies. I'm in love with Africa. And I was very happy when my prime minister went to Africa, of course, in last year, I joined him. And even when I became editor-in-chief, he went to Liberia for a few hours, 10 hours flight to go, 10 hours back, 7 hours in Liberia. Guess who was in the plane? I was in the plane because I love this continent. And when I see how my country is returning to Africa, or Africa is returning to us, this is also a great thing. This is something extraordinary also. Very important. Every continent is important. Not only the rich or the trade, every continent is important. And Africa is courting Israel right now, or vice versa, and this is beautiful. The same thing that has happened in Asia and Asian-Israeli relations has happened in Africa. In 2016, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited sub-Saharan Africa in a multi-state historic visit. He arrived in Uganda, where he attended a ceremony to mark the 40th anniversary of the Entebbe rescue mission. He held a summit with the leaders of 8 African nations. That is also important. They come to him where he arrived somewhere. In 2017, Netanyahu was the first leader of a non-African state to speak at the Economic Community of West African States, what we call ECOWAS, summit in Liberia. Now you have to understand one thing concerning this specific trip I told you. It's not that all the world now is courting us and everybody loves us. Of course, we still have enemies. We still have countries who don't like us. You can see it in multilateral events. You can see it at the UN. And you can see it. This is totally obvious. But what is important, for example, ECOWAS, when you see countries making pressure over Liberia, like Algeria, like Mauritania, a country that I lived for 4 years as the ambassador of Israel, when they put pressure, and still, although the pressure, they maintain the visit of Israeli Prime Minister, they maintain his speech, and he is greeted. So because it's Netanyahu, it's the fact that he's the Prime Minister of Israel, and getting so much honor, that proves to you that also something is happening that is a good thing, something positive also is happening. Israel may also be upgraded from an observer state to a member state in ECOWAS, but has not been able to do so, as I said, because of Algeria, and unfortunately also South Africa, which also is being, how would I say, a country that, unfortunately, diplomatically, still we have a big gap between them and us. That said, even the historically anti-Israel African National Congress in South Africa is showing signs of change towards Israel, and the Maghreb is warming to Israel because of the events of the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring did not bring democracy, as some predicted, including very famous journalists, even in New York, in important newspapers. But at the same time, something did happen, and maybe we shall see it in the coming years. In South America, another continent, small, not important. South America, Brazil, torpedoed the appointment of an ambassador because of his settler links, if you remember. But it was just a localized event that did not imply a worsening of relations. In Argentina, President Macri is very pro-Israel, and he's even led to the rare visit of Netanyahu to Argentina as part of a historic visit to Latin America. EU, Europe, of course. Now I'm getting to your part of the world. EU double standard, but strong European ties. Although you can see them in, how would I say, multilateral events, or when you hear sometimes speeches of leaders, you don't like what you hear as an Israeli. But when it comes to bilateral relations, or when it comes to things that we can't talk about yet, then you see that things are functioning, and even functioning beautifully. In Europe, the EU is still part of the anti-Israel multilateral dimension, as I said, but there is still a double standard toward Israel. Labeling of products, for example, from Judea and Samaria, but as you know, not from Melilla, not from Cyprus, of course not from Falkland, not from any other distributed regions held by the European countries, and not from the Morocco-controlled area in the Western Sahara and other areas. By the way, when we speak about Western Sahara, I'll give you an example. If you go, for example, to Samaria, and you've got amazing wines in Samaria, amazing wines, that I appreciate a lot. And then, for example, you want to buy a wine from Samaria. I won't name them, of course, but I could if you just beg me. And you'll see this label, of course, this tagging of it. But if you go, let's say, to Western Sahara, I lived in Mauritania, not far away, and I can tell you they have amazing fish in Western Sahara, like in Mauritania. Maybe that's the reason I stayed 4 years. And they've got this fish they call tiof. It's meroui for those who speak French. It's like the Rolls Royce of the fish. So, of course, in Europe, they like very much to order this fish from Mauritania or Western Sahara. Try to imagine you get in a very nice brasserie in Paris, this Western Sahara fish with a label in the eye of the fish. It won't even come to your mind. Or try to imagine a British guy when he comes to Cyprus, to the Turkish part, and no, I will not buy a house over there for summer because it's a disputed area. When it comes to Israel, it's a bit different. Is it changing? I definitely think so. It will take time, but we're on the right path. Anyway, We have also, of course, and that's the last part, which is also very important, Israel-US relationship. For 8 years, I mean, all my friends, I mean, including in the Israeli media, explained to me during debates, during meetings, how much we're losing America. We are losing America. That's it. Look what's going on in colleges. Look at the Obama administration. Look at UN resolutions. We are losing America. And God forbid, if we're losing America, Tziki, maybe you and me, you and I, take a satellite, go to the moon somewhere, I don't know what, take a missile and just run. But we have had elections. And of course, elections have proven that the media also is very limited in their prophecies. You have seen it as me. And US-Israel alliance restored to its former glory, and that's also amazing. The relations with the President Trump are worlds apart from those under President Obama. Let's be honest, I mean, maybe people have declared President Obama as the Messiah. President Obama was the best ever. Unfortunately, 8 years after, that wasn't the case. I can tell you that in 2008, elections in America, Virginia, Manassas, the eve before the vote, I was there in Manassas covering the elections. 100,000 people were there, like Play-Doh in his hands. 100,000 people. You had Pakistani for America, Jews for Obama, Arabs for Obama, I don't know, widows for Obama, mothers-in-law for Obama. Everything was there. They were all cheering. He came, and of course, peace with Israel and Palestine. Obama will do it in a second. Messiah. Problem with China, trade problems, Obama will fix in a second. I don't know, madam, your washing machine doesn't work. He will come and fix it in a second. Obama will do everything. And you saw after 8 years, I mean, look at the world we got in the heritage, and now we have another one. But when it comes to Israel, of course, I mean, I can't say that I'm very much in despair. Obama focused on multilateralism and putting pressure on Israel via international institutions like the UN, like the Resolution 2334, just before he left. You remember, December? That was our Hanukkah present, or maybe his Christmas present, I don't know. But President Trump has focused on his relations with Israel on a more emotional level, the first visit by a sitting president to the Western Wall. Don't tell me that this picture, don't tell me that this visit didn't affect each and any one of you, whether you like him or not. Or appreciate what he's like, appreciate. Trump refused to say the settlements are the obstacle to peace, departing from his predecessors. By the way, it was an interview to me, he gave at the White House, and he said in a very clear way, settlements are not the cause. And by the way, between you and me, of course, because you can't say that, it's not politically correct, settlements are not the cause. Settlements are not the cause, and this is totally true. Now European leaders have to understand that, but that's another question. And they did not insist also on a settlement freeze. Trump has been very friendly on a public and personal level and has taken the bold step of decertifying the Iran deal and attacking the UN non-stop for its bias against Israel. When I say that, there's another point I have to clear and very important. Of course, Israel does not like the Iran deal, yet it's not a bilateral deal, it's a multilateral deal. That's going to be very difficult for President Trump, of course, to cancel it. The second thing that is very important when I speak about the UN, permit me just a little remark. I think one of you, during the opening speeches, talked about, I think it was the gentleman from Italy. Gentleman from Italy? Where is he? Yes, here on the first row. And you spoke, and I was very correct, and I appreciated what you said concerning the fact that you have to teach people what is Zionism, because people don't really know. But our problem is not about people who don't know ignorance. I mean, and some of them not ignorant. I mean, if you live now in a suburb of Helsinki, you know, Zionism is not, you don't know everything about Sri Lanka or everything about, I mean, people also are entitled not to know. The problem I have is with those who know, and yet, I mean, on the contrary, I mean, lie afterwards, or that facts are not important. And why do I say this in concerning the UN? Because, and concerning Trump? Because I see now, there was a friend of mine who works in a newspaper, in a competitor, but a huge friend, a great friend, Ben-Dor Yamini. Ben-Dor Yamini wrote this book about the industry of lies. And we were together last week in Washington, and he was saying how important for people, I mean, to understand, not only in order to sell his book, that's also important, of course, because facts are really, really important. But when it comes to UNESCO, do you want to tell me, you who live in Europe here, that Europeans don't know the attachment or the links between Jews and Jerusalem? It's not a question of religion, also, it's a question of history. When I take my family and my mother-in-law to Nazareth, she's converted, my wife, so when I take her to Nazareth, and I show her the synagogue where Jesus prayed, the synagogue in Nazareth, just beside the church, I mean, what about the chronology? What about facts? Meaning that facts are not important. And when President Trump and America retreat or just say, goodbye UNESCO, For me, Israel, I find it very, very comforting, and I have a lot of gratitude towards that act, and this is also part of our foreign policy. Relations with the US have always been strong because they are based on shared values and on common destiny, rather than on short-term and preconceived agendas for the world order. The Israel-US relations are great, not just because of the current administration and not just because of the evangelicals. It is because it is a shared alliance aimed changing the world. The nations see eye to eye. Now I want to tell you again, as I said before, I cannot predict what is going to happen, yet for too many years, I mean, we in Israel send you, Jews or friends of Israel around the world, like the worrying image, as if, I mean, right now, I mean, wow, we're surrounded by enemies, everything is very, very dangerous, we need support, we need help, we need money, etc., etc. No, on the contrary, we have reached today when the country is almost 70, do I count correctly? 70. Almost 70 years old, and I say, I mean, wow, I am so, as someone who was born in Israel in 2 weeks' time, 53 years ago, and I see the achievements of Israel. And today, I mean, there was a time, it's like an interaction, it's like a cycle. As I give lectures or as I'm invited by communities, and that's also what you do, of course, in your organization, I mean, the attachments of communities to Zionism or to Israel and vice versa. So I think that life is like a cycle. Sometimes you come, we come in Israel to you, because we live. It's rainy days, it can be war, it can be economical crisis. We come to you and you give us energy. And maybe Tziki will agree with me that right now we live in a certain moment in this cycle where you come to us and we give you energy. Sometimes we're the strong, you're the weak, sometimes you're the weak, or sometimes you're the strong and we're weak and vice versa. For the time being, Baruch Hashem, again I say, we are in a very good, we're like this battery which is full of energy right now. And we have enough for all of you. And by the way, I mean, very important, this battery, I mean, we don't do you any favor. It's yours. This one is yours. I mean, Israel is yours, and as much as it's mine. And I will conclude, but maybe I'll take a few questions and answers. I don't want us to be late because the day is long, and Shabbat is in Germany, what, at 2 o'clock? So maybe I'll just, before the questions and answers, I come down from DC. I've got, today it's the birthday of my little one. I've got many kids, but the little one today is 3 years old, and of course I would have loved to be with her. But when Rabbi David asked me to do something, an assignment, I will always say yes. And maybe I will finish with a very, which concerns your organization, which concerns Judaism, because Zionism, I mean, obvious. But something, I think that right now we have to strengthen Judaism, and as you see, I don't have a kippah on my head, but I think that's the importance. I want to strengthen my strongest ally. Baruch Hashem, thank God, I mean, I had an interesting life till now. I had an interesting life, I covered so many things. I think I was gifted until now. I mean, things can change. And never take things for granted. And in 2004, I had the chance not the chance, I mean, we spoke about India, about Modi. I joined my Ministry of Foreign Affairs who went to Delhi, and he asked me to join him to the trip. I went on an Air France plane, and I met this lady on the plane. I mean, and sometimes like in, you know, crash happens not only in movies, not only in Hollywood, also in life. It happened to me at least. And that person, of course, I mean, did not share the same religion as I did. And that was terrible for me, but I was very lucky. Next conversation we had, she said, you know, I had a dream about you. I thought, of course, she would speak about an American movie star or something. And she said, no, you had a very big white beard. And she described me as if I was Moses. And she told me about her grandmother in Paris. She's French, from Corsica. Her grandmother, Second World War, at Café de la Paix in Paris, beside La Madeleine, between La Madeleine and Opéra. And she said how she saw, I mean, Les Rafles, she saw the Jews were being taken. And the grandmother was Christian, French Christian, was very shocked by that. And told the granddaughter, which is Vanessa, the flight attendant, told her all the story. And since then, she always found attraction towards this religion, which, by the way, was the essence, not the essence. I mean, as we said before, chronology. Why look at something else when you can go to the basics, which is, in her case, Judaism. Anyway, we meet, she tells me what she tells me, and we decided to share our life together. I went to Mauritania as Israel's ambassador. She joined me. 4 years I represented Israel in an Arabic country. That was huge, that was amazing. But unfortunately, there was something lacking. I mean, there was something lacking, although she wanted to convert. And we spoke about conversion, and we spoke about assimilation. And I wouldn't like to be in those figures, but if I would have been, would have been that my life was a total failure, for me at least. And someone around you in this crowd, his name is Rav David Ben Nissan, When 3 years after I had my little David, it's thanks to him and thanks to this amazing work of conversion and thanks to this amazing work your organization is doing against assimilation. It's not about being religious, it's about being Jewish. תודה רבה. סיפרתי בתחילת ההרצאה, דיברתי על החזרה שלי מוושינגטון, מכנס מצוין, כנס מוצלח ביותר, כנס עם הרבה מאוד אנרגיה, עם הרבה מאוד אנשים טובים, עם הרבה מאוד מחויבות, אבל כנס גם שחשף בפניי, כי אני חי בארץ, אני לא... חשף בפניי סוג של קרע, שנובע בדיוק מהדבר שאתה דיברת עליו, מתווה הכותל, נושא דת מדינה, שזה חוזר, זה חוזר. תראה, אנחנו צריכים, אבל אני עכשיו אחזיר לך שאלת שאלה, ואני אחזיר לך שאלה בשאלה או בדיון, כי אין פה שום דבר מוחלט. אין פה שום דבר, זה גם הרבה מאוד סובייקטיבי. אתה חושב הוא מעריך בסובייקטיבי. השאלה הגדולה היא, האם הדברים כפי שהם נתפסים על ידי יהדות העולם, במקרה הספציפי הזה זה ארצות הברית, מתווה הכותל נניח, איך מתפללים, גיור, כיצד יש לגייר, חוקי הגיור, האם הדרך שבה זה נתפס בחול, זה נתפס באותה צורה בחברה הישראלית? שאלה סופר לגיטימית, אתה מסכים איתי, זה מותר לגיטימי. עכשיו, אני חושב שבחול דברים מקבלים פרופורציות שהן לא מתקבלות בישראל. ואתן לך דוגמה מאוד קלה. הנושא של הגיור למשל, כמובן בחול, מאחר ואתה מדברים על איזה כמה 70% אסימילציה בארצות הברית, הרי המספרים הם מדהימים, אחידים. אתה כמובן רוצה להקל כמה שיותר. בישראל התופעה, למרות שיש את העניין של הרוסים, התופעה היא קצת שונה, וגם אנחנו מוצאים, ואחרי זה אני חושב שמחר יהיה על זה דיון על הנושא הזה, מוצאים את הדרך. מתווה הכותל, אותו דבר, אני חושב שבחול זה תפס הרבה יותר פרופורציות מאשר בחברה הישראלית. תראה למשל כמה זמן השיח הזה או העימות הזה יחזיק, וגם כן מסיבות פוליטיות שהאזרח הישראלי יבין היטב. ואני אגיד לך עכשיו משהו קצת שאני ארחיק, ואני אגיד לך משהו גם שאולי לא ישמח אותך, אולי כן, אבל האוכלוסייה הישראלית, בנושא אורתודוקסיה, הישראלי עצמו, רובו המוחלט הוא מה? הוא לא חילוני והוא לא אורתודוקסי, הוא מסורתי. לא נעים להגיד לך, הוא קצת דומה לי. זה אותם כאלה גם כן שעד לא מזמן היו קידוש, וזה מאוד מאוד חשוב, מהדורת החדשות ולראות את עמית סגל זה לא פחות חשוב. אתה מכיר את זה. אחרי זה מתחזקים כמובן, אל תדאג. לפני, צולם ביום חול. שנייה, אני חוזר, שנייה. אבל אותם אורתודוקסים, אותם מסורתיים מודעים לכך שהאורתודוקסי הוא עושה את העבודה בשבילי. כמובן שאני רוצה שהוא ילך לעבודה, כמובן שאני רוצה שהוא ילך לצבא, אבל אין בי, אני לא... זאת אומרת, הרוב, אני מדבר איתך על אלה שברשת ועושים רעש, אני מדבר איתך על הרוב עצמו. עכשיו, לקביעה האחרונה שלך, וזה דבר שצריך לקחת את תשומת לבך, שכביכול בישראל לא לוקחים בחשבון את יהדות התפוצות, אני לא הייתי אומר את זה. אני חושב שבאירוע הזה של Over the Rainbow, כאשר אני הגעתי לחדר במלון, מה ציפה לי? מכתב מלשכת או מראש הממשלה. כשאני מגיע לאירוע עצמו, יש לי ברכות מנשיא המדינה. אתה רוצה, מה, רצית אולי גם כן מהנשים שלהם? אני לא יודע, תגיד לי. Yes, other questions? עוד שאלות? No questions. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me.